It's always weird when like companies send out warnings or they issue warnings and things like that. I think that, sometimes it's needed, sometimes it's probably not. But, at the same point in time, I do feel like in this particular interest of gamers or whatever, we're starting to see a little bit of a weird situation with these types of warnings because we're increasingly reliant on, the video game being always online and things like that. So yeah, it can be a little bit different than past things, and hopefully this is something that, more of us kind of look at and say, okay, well, this is something that definitely needs to be worked on a little bit in terms of, getting some reliability fixed and things like that. So hopefully that'll be the case going forward. I did want to get into this pretty quick though. What's up, everybody? I'm Crap Gamer. This is Crap Gamer Reviews with another video. Thank you so much for checking it out. Please like, share, subscribe. I would appreciate that. Simple like goes a long way. I do daily gaming content, and that's something that I'm very proud of. So if you guys could just like the videos, that would be awesome. Even if you don't want to subscribe, a like will go a very, very long time. So we'll see. Anyway, I try to be fun and informative. It's crazy days for console gaming right now. There's a lot of interesting things going on. So I kind of wanted to talk about this. This is kind of a warning that's going on. So Microsoft was having a server outage, a little bit different than the usual ones. There's been some weird behaviors going on with Xbox, and they're kind of talking about it a little bit. And this is something that we can probably come to expect more and more in the future as we become more and more reliant on these servers. This is why I say, if Microsoft were to exit the console industry, our libraries would be gone. I mean, people just unable to play games and things like that. But Xbox suffered another server outage, but not in the way you might expect. It was confirmed by the Xbox official status support page. The effects are store and subscriptions, cloud gaming and remote play, and games and gaming. At the time, the team was working on getting these issues fixed, and they said, and I quote, "We are aware that users may be experiencing issues loading product pages, completing purchases, and viewing their libraries. While we investigate, follow along on our status page. But specifically, you might notice that there's issue with buying games on the Xbox Store, playing games through cloud, and accessing remote play, and even playing digital games from your library. Dun dun dun, what I've been saying all along. Everything else to do with Xbox's online servers, including sign-ins and multiplayer, should work fine. The issues should be fixed in coming hours, but if you're still facing it and want an alternative method to play, don't forget you can temporarily put your Xbox in offline mode to play some games. But it's crazy, But to me, anyway, it's a little bit insane that viewing your own game library of games installed on your consoles, the ones that you own, it's not permanently on your actual console. It's basically just a bunch of artwork, whether it's kind of digital or whatever. No internet connection, no icons, no nothing. It's just these blocks. It's weird. So again, this is why I think people kind of don't take it seriously when I mention, oh hey, we could literally lose our libraries. Like, there is so much DRM tied up into these consoles, especially Xbox, like way more than anybody else, And I know that there was a little bit of outrage over the Nintendo stuff because Nintendo was like off having these cards that are basically just almost like what the Xbox One was trying to do, which was very much, you buy this physical thing and then you install it, and then it's basically just a key on the disc or whatever, and you don't need it actually in there anymore. So Nintendo's doing something very similar to that, and people have kind of taken notice to it. I don't think it's going over terrible. Obviously it's not going over as bad as what happened with Microsoft, but people still look at these things and go, oh, like, why are you doing that? So for me anyway, when I look at Xbox and I see them kind of doing this thing where they're like, oh, we're going to allow this or allow that to happen, I kind of look at that as a bad thing. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think these companies should be taking advantage of gamers in that way. It's like, I get it, I'm a dinosaur, but I still like the physical games. I still like the data to be on the physical discs, or whatever the case may be. So it is a little bit strange to me when this kind of stuff happens. And again, people are kind of noticing that Microsoft can be a little bit ahead of the times a little bit with some of the things that they do. And at the end of the day, I think that's been both a curse and a blessing a little bit for them. I mean, it really behooved them early on with the original Xbox and the Xbox 360 to be ahead of the game with stuff like achievements and party chat, and having things like Netflix streamable on your platform, and introducing all that kind of stuff, like really evolving the console and helping the brand, having only an Ethernet port on the original Xbox, a hard drive in the box. They were the first ones to do that. I mean, they did a lot of cool things to help innovate and do things. I mean, now I think they try, they were trying to move gaming forward, in my opinion, and now it's like, to me anyway, it almost feels like they've given up on that and they just want to make a buck, and that's kind of where all that stuff kind of comes from, or whatever. But we'll see if that's something that continues to kind of change, or continues to do something good or bad for Microsoft. But at the end of the day, I think Microsoft is onto some interesting things, maybe not things that all of us are excited about, but they do seem to have some interesting things kind of coming about, that people can be excited about. I think at least of all, I think we finally have some great stuff coming from the first party, even if like a lot of it's not going to be exclusive or whatever. But I still think that they have some cool stuff like that. So if you do have an Xbox, hey, you're probably set, at least for the time being, and that can be a very good thing. We'll have to wait and see if Microsoft can kind of drum up stuff for the average fan or whatever. But for me anyway, I look at this and I say, hey, this has been kind of a crazy generation. It's been lackluster in some ways, it's been exciting in some ways, and it's still more to come. That's going to be the crazy thing. I mean, just look at last gen. Like there was some good things there and some bad things, and some surprises. I think Microsoft was able to pull off some interesting surprises for us all. With like some of the backwards compatibility stuff, and they went with power and like kind of reverse course there, and but you look at things now, and I think things are kind of we still haven't really got those games, in my opinion, that are just blowing everybody away. I mean, there's some good ones that have come out for sure. It's just kind of crazy to see, and I love seeing people get excited about gaming. That's, I think, the thing that really kind of gets people amped up for the future of video games. It's like, I know there's a lot of hate around the Switch too right now, but for me, it's exciting to see the new hardware announced. It's exciting to see people like get excited for the games and things like that. And so that's where I think like a lot of that kind of lives on, or whatever. You know what I mean? So again, Microsoft might not always do the right things, but we are starting to notice that gaming is kind of more to the masses than ever has been before. So hopefully that's something that kind of continues in the future as we go forward, and it can be something that realistically can be for everybody, because it's like everybody can be kind of a gamer. I don't know if we can all be gamers in the same way, because there's obviously people that can game on they can game on a phone and they can still be considered a gamer. That's not really the type of person that I would consider a gamer, but hey, they're gaming, and it's like, I think sometimes the industry tries to combine all these people, right? That's what Microsoft's doing, and I think that's where they're going to have a lot of trouble in the future, is because someone that just wants to play some Candy Crush or a phone game, they're not going to be interested in streaming Game Pass or this or that or the other thing. So again, that could be where there's some kind of discourse or whatever, and we'll see how that kind of works out. I still think it's going to be interesting, and I still think that it's going to be kind of a fun way to see how people kind of take some of this stuff. But like I said, anything can happen. I'm excited to see where gaming goes. Hopefully it goes a place where I can follow at least. It's like, it's kind of bad that so far we haven't really had that. It's like, I feel like it's a place where I can't exactly go, but we'll see what happens. I like to see some awesome games at the very least. I think as a gamer we can all agree that that's the most important part, is getting the games and, seeing people get excited about the future of the games and things like that. So with that being said, I will link this in the description. You guys can check it out. Let me know how you guys feel about it. Again, we're dependent more and more on these servers. I don't think that's a good thing. So thanks for watching. Have a great day. Rack 'em up. Crap Gamer out.